Hello.
Hello.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started promptly, so I know we have a lot to cover. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining our first virtual Zoom workshop for masks for 2021. My name is Lisa Hachidorian. I'm the Executive Director for MOA, if I haven't met you before. But we are so pleased to have Jill Mott with us tonight, leading our workshop. And let me give you some quick ground rules here for Zoom before we start. If everyone could hit their mute button when you're not talking, and if for some reason you don't want to show your video, then you can hit stop video down in the lower left corner. If you have questions, type them into the chat function box, and then we can go through them through the workshop. And I know Jill wants it to be somewhat interactive, so we'll have time for questions throughout. Let me introduce Jill for you. So Jill Mott is a lifestyle portrait and editorial photographer in the Northern Colorado area. She specializes in documentary photography and contemporary portraiture. This is her 4th year being a mask artist with the museum, and she does absolutely fantastic masks. And each year, Jill has built on what she's learned from the previous year in creating a mask for the museum, and has spent hours experimenting and playing with a wide range of materials that she is going to share with us today. Her curiosity has taken her around the world, from California to Zimbabwe to Italy, Florida, London, and Fort Collins. She has over 2 decades of experience as a photojournalist, and she brings curiosity and passion to her authentic stories of art and photography. So the process that you pick up today from her presentation will hopefully guide you through some different steps and materials and concepts for your mask as you work through for the next couple months, and hopefully help you feel more confident as you go through the process. So again, thank you everyone, and welcome, and I'll turn it over to Jill.
Great, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining us and showing me your video. It makes me able to connect better with you, and through this process I want to try to feel like we're in an art room together as much as we possibly can. I think that this is going to be a great year for us to work on masks, because we'll be spending a lot of time inside probably over the next few weeks. But I was thrilled when I opened up my mask box and saw the shape this year. I was just really, really loving the idea of this kind of organic shape, and lots of possibilities started to come to mind. What I love about the mask is the idea of the mask, and really making those features stand out and represent the features of a face. I'm a multimedia artist, so I don't do a lot of painting and drawing. So I'm always thinking about different ways that I can put my masks together. And you can see over the years, all these amazing masks that have been done. These are covers from a couple different months. I can see about 8, 10 of you who, I know we have one new mask artist. Is anyone else a new? 2, 3? All
Wow.
right. And then we have a couple veterans as well, I see in there. So I want to bring in you guys at some stage and tell us about some of your techniques that you've used over the years. But there's really no right or wrong answer. It really is open to you as much as you want. For me, this is the start of my 3rd year, last year's mask, and I always love to start off just with the outline and start to lay things on top of the mask, figure out where the features are, and spacing. One of the things that's really, really becomes challenging as you continue to work on these is it looks one way flat, one way 2D, then you start getting into the sculptural part, and then you start getting about how does it display, and all of those kinds of things. What I like to do is look around and see what inspires me. I'm often and most often inspired by African art, fabrics, jewelry. I love the jewelry, and just start collecting little materials that you have. one thing I was thinking about is, what are those little bits and bobs that you saved for that one special piece? I know everyone out there has one. I'm saving this for the one-day piece. This might be the time you use it. Start thinking about those things. Start thinking about, what do you have in excess that you can maybe get rid of or use in your mask. And we're going to talk about this. So the first thing we're just going to play. One of the things that I've found with our new times is that I'm not using my hands as much. And I want us to use our hands today, and I want us to play. So everyone, if you have a brush, grab your biggest brush that you have. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody here. And I want you to pick 2 or 3 colors. And you can pick whatever colors you want. You can think in a palette. You can think of 2 colors that you would never put together. I'm going to choose fluorescent pink. And I am going to put a huge, you painters out there, I know I'm probably doing something wrong here, but we're just playing. A huge dollop just on the top, and try to keep it just on that one bit. Okay? And let's then pick maybe your second color, or if you, depending on how big your brush is, maybe you even have a third color. And I'm just using acrylic here, or just, you know, Hobby Lobby, nothing fancy. Hobby Lobby tip, pro tip, always use your 40% coupon.
Yeah.
Michael's too, Joann's. And I'm just gonna put another ball up here. Now look around. If you have a piece of paper, use that piece of paper. If you have something else, maybe you have a small canvas, it doesn't matter the paper or anything. And just all I want you to do is take one big brush stroke down, as far as your paper will go.
So how many colors did you load on yours?
I only put 2, and I really don't like either one of them, but that's the beauty of playing, right?
Yeah.
I know what I'm not gonna do.
All right.
Will you ask everyone to mute themselves, please?
Sure. Can everyone mute yourself, please? Please. Oh, I guess that was you, Judy, because we were having a conversation. If you have your video on, show us the colors you're using and the type of brush you're using. Now load up again and do it again, but this time maybe make a swirl. Try to use that same pattern on the brush. I am just gonna jump on here. I see a bunch of new people joined us. Thank you so much. And just make sure you are muted. We're gonna open up the lines here in a second to see all the beautiful work everyone's doing. All right, now is everyone criticizing? Oh, that doesn't look good. I should never use that color. Oh, who's thinking, I like this. I like this combination. This combination is something I hadn't really thought about. Or is everybody choosing what they already used in their lives? That's what I'm curious about. Are you, hi, number 10 down there. Load up with a couple other colors and do something a little bit more organic, like a swish. All right, I painted on my mask actually here. Now, all I'm really wanting you to do with this is to think about being excessive with paint, number 1. Let's get messy, who cares, right? Trying something maybe that's out of your comfort zone in terms of color. Putting 2 colors together together, seeing what happens. Right? Are you getting brown? Are you getting something really interesting? So just someone who's made a little mess. Oh, why don't you open up your video and show us what your little streaks look like?
I feel like Picasso.
I like it. Oh, I hear theme coming there for sure. Oh, Trudy, I like that. Trudy, will you open up your mic? Tell us that has a little structure. So Kendra, hi Kendra, yours does too. Tell us a little bit about what that structure, is that a spiral?
Yep, it's spiral, and it evolves from purple, or a teal, a rich red. Anyway, it just all flew together.
Do you use spirals in your work often?
I actually do in some, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a really nice, I mean, it has a lot of symbolism in that shape. That's beautiful. I like that. I noticed Kendra had a little structure to hers as well.
This would be my 4th year for submitting a mask.
What has been your favorite mask that you've done?
Oh, Goddess. It was exotic travel.
One of the themes that I think is probably very popular, travel. And we'll talk about themes to be thinking about. So we really haven't, all we've done is just draw paint on a piece of paper and allowed ourselves not to be too boxed in. That's all we're doing right here. Making a little mess. Put that to the side. We're going to use this in a second. Oh, I like all those colors, Amy. Nice. Binder paper is awesome. It's a great canvas. Watercolor. Is that watercolor, Jane?
It's acrylic.
Nice. Nice and muted. Hi, Maya. Suzanne. Hi, guys. All right, so we're going to put this aside and just keep it. We're going to try to let it dry if it's a little bit wet. All right. Now, just take any paper. Any paper, it can be any kind of paper, just terrible paper. Terrible, get it? Terrible, not terrible, but terrible. You think you spell it differently, actually? One of the things that I, as a photographer, use in my first 2 masks was a lot of photography. And if you think about the actual photo being printed on photo paper, it is very difficult to work with in terms of a sculptural aspect, attaching things to it. It really did not want to behave for me, or wouldn't behave for me. So I wanted to play a lot with different kinds of paper, and I didn't want the mask to look like it was made of paper. I didn't want it to have a paper mache kind of feel with it. So I played a lot with how I could distress paper and different sorts of paper, which I'll show you here in a minute. But this is just a strip, and all I want you guys to do, and I'm sure everyone knows how to do this, accordion fold. Accordion fold. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? Kindergarten style. Everybody's got that. Now, if we think about one of the major things that we should be thinking about, in my opinion, is structural aspects of our mass, right? And from my perspective, I like, again, to have texture and 3D aspect. I think it's really important for the mass to be sculptural in the sense that you can see different angles and perspectives from different heights, from different perspectives. My friend Shana down there says that she thinks a lot about looking up at a mask because her child, little kids look up at our masks, right? You gotta give them a little surprise down there maybe, right? And we think
And I'm worried
also
about them grabbing it too.
there is
So,
that.
so I'm very aware of that.
So thinking about the mask from all different perspectives, in my opinion, is very, very important. And the reason why I'm having you do something like this is because we can do something like this with paper, with metal, with fabric, a lot of different options. Now, if anyone has a piece of thread and needle there, and I pre-threaded, so that might, and it's not imperative at all. We're just playing, using our hands. My son still is 14, still doesn't know how to thread it, put a button on. Sadly, I'm a bad mom. But all I'm doing here is putting the needle through my little paper. Just a easy thing to do. And now we've maybe increased the structure of anything that we're going to be making, right? We can have things be movable now, perhaps, if we have this kind of structure, very simple. We can bunch and unbunch things. And you can think about the different materials that you would use for something like that. My favorite material in the world is copper wire. I love me some copper wire, 24 gauge. This is fantastic for all kinds of structural things that you can do. Wrapping things, tying things. And this is always a part of something in my mask, whether it's helping me to attach something, hiding the way something is looking and using it. It's way less hassle than any kinds of glues, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this is great stuff. Amazon everywhere, 24 gauge, because it's really malleable, and you can get a lot out of it. The idea of thinking about things like this, right? These little pieces of paper, think of what you can do, texture, paint on this idea. For me, in my last mask, someone was gracious enough to donate some 8mm film. And that's how I started to apply some of these sculptural things. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed this year because of our masks not being able to be seen in person, because I did and do spend a lot of time on the idea of 3D. I think it's really, really important to be implementing sculptural aspects to your mask. Clay is another thing I forgot to mention, and texture, of course. So grab another little chunk of paper and try to tear out a circle. So I don't think our paint is done quite yet, drying. Just rough, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just a circle. And then when you have your circle, just take one rip anywhere, doesn't really matter. So then all I'm going to do here is just overlap these and make a cup, a circle. Yep. Orly's got it. Now I can enhance this a million different ways into something, and I can take my 24 gauge or my thread, and now I had a nice sculptural item of some nature that you can make. Now, there's a million great books out there on paper sculpture. And one of the things about paper and those other light materials is that it's not going to weigh the mass down. Is that something that we really, really want to be thinking about as we move forward? Another way to kind of think about using paper or other materials, you may want to texture those additionally. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is just a little bit of Mod Podge textured on there to give it a little bit more something something, and also to take away that really paper look and feel. One
Jill,
of the
can I
things
jump
that
in
I,
for a second?
yeah,
Just, I wanted to say something about the weight of masks because we've changed that over the years. When, well, before I got to the museum and up through, I think maybe 3 years or so, we used to hang the masks differently where we didn't have a backing and we would kind of glue our wiring onto the back. And then we figured out that that wasn't the best solution. And so we're creating masks now with another layer of clay that has the hook or the openings behind it. So it actually makes the mask twice as heavy. So weight is something to think about when you're creating your mask. Yeah.
and of course we'll get to that in a minute here, is that structure of where the weight is being placed and how, you know, you have two options. This is what's great, I love about the mask this year. I don't know if we have any other participants who aren't mask artists in the audience, but thank you for being here, and just hopefully you'll be inspired to take on a mask next year. But this allows us two different places to brace and do a few different things. One of the things that I spent a lot of time on is, again, experimenting with different kinds of paper. And this is actually a transparent fabric that you can print on. And you can get this at Jerry's Artorama or something else, some other online you can get it. And I'll provide a link for you guys. But think about the way light is on your mask and what kind of shadows you may create if you are having some kind of three-dimensional aspect to it. And there's tons of great products. A friend of mine, I think it was Shayna, said, "How's your mask coming along?" I was like, "Oh, good. I've experimented with 7 different kinds of glues. I'm really good, getting far on it." But meanwhile, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just playing, and that's what we did here, right? And one of the things that I hope you will come to understand is that that is part of the process. So thank you for enduring that little hands-on activity. I'm going to get back to my presentation here, and we did some fun stuff, but really we don't need anything special to start off with. We just need to allow ourselves to play. And with everything that we have going on and how much time we're spending on computers, think about the different ways that you can get messy and use your hands. As I mentioned, a lot of my inspiration comes from Africa, and I really have spent some time researching the mask and the meanings behind masks. And I would say that almost every culture around the world has a relationship with masks, and this is pre-COVID, of course. I have a wonderful Pinterest board with all my mask ideas, and as soon as I go to Pinterest now and put in mask, it's how to make one, rather than the rich history that so many cultures all over the world have in regards to their masks. Lovely patterns, lovely materials, lovely celebrations around masks. And that's what I always like to kind of look at and see what I can do to replicate some of those aspects to continue on a tradition of mask making. A lot of time the materials that I use are a little too precious for me. So for example, some of my fabrics from Africa. So I think about different ways that I can use those. I photograph them and then use them on the transparent fabric that I just showed you. But again, think, what have you been collecting? What do you have around the house that you can implement? I spend a lot of time in the process, and I also spend a lot of time working with the materials. And one thing I'm going to recommend as we go through here is to be thinking about your time budget. How much time do you have to put into a mask? How much do you want to put into a mask? Are you going to spend research on it? Or are you just one of those people that just like sees the mask and it's done, you can put your hands on it? I'm always afraid it's going to break. So I spend a lot of time on the side figuring out all the different bits and pieces, using cheap materials like Xerox paper and seeing how they can come together. I also like to enhance the textures as much as I can to add to that feel. And one of the things that has been really, really helpful for me is to use small mini canvases as tests. So, and those of you that are artists, they make fantastic little presents for Christmas, and you'll be in the mood because you've made all these wonderful little mini pieces of art that everyone wants to have because they can't afford your mask, right? So get yourself a few little canvases, watch those sales. Early on, some of the instructions from the museum when I first did my first mask was don't use hot glue and things like that. And we have to be careful of those, but how do you use it? If, for example, on these images here, I used it to build up texture. The other thing that you can look into to build up texture, which I spent a lot of time researching on, is modeling paste. It's wonderful, right? And it's also great because it allows you to hold objects in. So talking about that weight idea, if anyone needs this, modeling paste, medium, I used a gel medium. There's lots of different varieties. And again, I can share some of these links with you. But it really is great stuff because you can, I'm trying to stick in a lot of things, and it's very, very strong. Very, very strong. This is a little mini canvas, and I have a little plastic camera in it. And then I've used the paste to build up texture, just to kind of see where my mask was going. Here's another example. I will just some tissue with Mod Podge and just trying to see how the image, how I could enhance and build up. Sometimes I find that the lips, most often, I find the lips the least built up, and I really, who doesn't love some voluptuous lips, right? So we gotta usually build those up a little bit. And think about those ideas. If you are painting on your mask, you can still do all of these things and really enhance. This was my final mask, my first year, and I have some porcupine quills in there. My first thought was that I was gonna cover the whole mask, but then I couldn't part with all my quills. So this was my first year, and you can see some of the techniques that I've used there. This happened to me a lot. I overthink and I spend months and hours on it, and a lot of it was fun, but then it starts to get down to the wire and you start thinking, what am I gonna do? And I'm sure everyone has seen those masks that they have just finished them the night before. So I know none of you will be those type of artists, but the things to be really focusing on as you start thinking this is the structure. I think is one of the most important things. Is the ceramic it's durable. Those of you that are first time, it's got a rough finish to it. It does absorb. What we also want to be thinking about are many, many hands touch these lovely masks from the time that they're unloaded, hung, taken home, put back up, the amount of time you spend on them. So working those ideas really with that as a top priority is important. Also, how will it be displayed? Is it going to be hung? A lot of people, and if you look at some of the catalogs, a lot of folks have masks that are down. You know, they display them down or have a stand for them, which is very nice and different. And some people build entire canvases behind as well. The weight is really a thing to be thinking about. You can drill through these masks. You need a specific drill bit and someone who knows what they're doing. I was very lucky to have a friend with every power tool in the world. to help me with this. It was the first time that I dared drill through, but I really wanted to be able to have light come through my mask that last year. So I drilled holes to thread in some lights, as well as put a very heavy camera lens in the center of my mask. So that's possible. There was another wonderful artist from last year who had about 170 holes that he dug, and he used the method where he did it underwater. So it can be done. And if anyone remembers his name, he was a featured artist. It was a great piece, and each hole had a guitar wire through it, and at the top of the guitar wire was a little plastic note, and there had to have been 200, 175. Dee's shaking her head, she remembers.
Yeah, Danny Sandoval Feig.
Yes, it was amazing. I don't know. So he might be a resource if anyone wants to take it that far. Some people may even want to, intentionally break their masks and do something with it. What was really wonderful for me, and I'd love some of you artists in the audience who have done work before, was how community this became. And I think, Judy, we were talking about that with you. I had people give me advice, help me with the different parts, encourage me, tell me to back off. You're taking, I think you've added a little enough. It's okay. Stop there. A lot of my concepts came together, and it was really nice because I think everyone felt like they were part of the mask. And that was really nice for me, and they wanted to see it and they wanted to be part of it. And so I would encourage you to think about those things. This is my second year Mask Virtue with more of the sculpture. So I'd love if anyone out there wants to tell us a little bit about their process and how it has been for them as a mask artist. I know, Trudy, you've been a mask artist for a long time. Maybe you could tell us about your experience.
I got going on goddesses. And so I did goddess after goddess after goddess for a few years in a row. And I also showed at a mask thing down in Denver, which was for the Denver Hospice. And I have to tell you, my most famous thing was selecting the same eyelashes, which were about 2 inches long, as Katy Perry. So they had all of these famous people who had done masks. I'm sure they didn't do them. They had somebody else do them most of the time. But anyway, they put my mask next to her mask, and we both had these long eyelashes. But I look at the mask and I go, talk to me. And I keep passing it on the kitchen counter and I say, talk to me. And that's how I select stuff.
That's a great way, and early on, I think people were talking about the shape. How does the shape influence you? And I thought that last year we might see a lot of suns and moons. It was a very round shape. I think things to be thinking about also, as it is a community event and it is a wonderful, wonderful fundraiser, we need to also be thinking about what is sellable, what are people going to actually hang. And it depends on where you are with what your process of the mask. Maybe you just want to go and do whatever you want, and you should, right? Maybe you want to try to attract a specific person. Maybe you're artists and you are working in a particular industry, and you might want to attract those types of clients or folks. I'm proud to say I was the 11th highest bid in the show, and I just love being 11 and not top 10, because that's a cool spot. So that was a goal for me personally as my third year. But the other years, I just wanted to see what I could do and how people would relate to it. And as Trudy said, how does the mask speak to you? So we have to take that other step. How is my mask, once it's done as the artist, speaking to the audience, and who is it going to speak to? Right? And I think that's what's really lovely. And I think we'll have a lot of interesting themes this year, and the themes that I've put up here are very generic, they're very universal, and of course you can break those down a million different ways, and they are not at all be all end all. but they are jumping off points. And I think the best masks that I've seen are actually reflections of people's own lives, because they really do put a lot into it if you know it's, if you are passionate about it. So here's the big part, the big tip. We have 7 weeks till our masks are due. So this is a little timeline for us. And I'd say if everyone wants to grab their phone and take a screenshot of it, and then after the presentation, you've got your wine and your sketchbook and your, you know, your little creativity juices going, put these dates in your calendar.
Actually,
Now,
the mask isn't due to the museum until December 5th and 6th. That's our deadline for delivering it to the museum.
oh, I thought it was different this year. Okay,
But
then.
so you freaked me out when you said November 13th. Whoa.
Well, make it due then anyways, because then there's Thanksgiving and everyone gets stressed out and your family's here, and then you got to move all your stuff, and then you got to start thinking about Christmas and all that. So my bad, guys. I apologize. I thought that was the last one. I thought it was earlier this year. What I would say, and the way that I base this, is that try at least to get 3 days of dry and stability time. And anything that you need to maybe readjust, I always also hang it somewhere in my house to make sure that it's going to hang. I think that's really, really important. And one of the things that I like to do, and I better take this off because this will, well, actually, if everyone gets this burned in your mind, you'll be right on track. One of the things that I like to use is this kind of soft pillow, because a lot of times I have to turn or adjust, and then you can stack it up, think about things that will allow you to look at it more one on like this, right? Because we spend all our time looking at it like this most of the time, down, right? And then it takes this whole nother form when you start seeing it upright. And then you start seeing all the little patches that you need to help and that kind of thing. So having something flat when you to put it up or turn it over or adjust, if you have fronts or backs, things that need to be, you know, attached to the back. Maybe you're making the crown and you need, you know, to add certain things. I love, who doesn't love some crowns? We all love some crowns in there. This one calls for a crown. I'm pretty sure there's a crown in this one for me. So think about that. The other thing is think about your time. What do you have? And I know my dates were wrong, but I know that also everyone starts to lose their mind around November and October, you know, Halloween, different things come into play. What's your space like? Can you leave your space out? Is it a process where you can set it down, you know, and step away and come back to it? I think those are things that I really wish that I had known. I have let myself go off the rails, and it's really taken a lot of time, and I loved my end result, but I probably could have done it with a little less time. I could have put some energy out to other things. So just be thinking about that. Also be thinking about your costs, what you're willing to do. As I mentioned, I experimented a lot. And as we all know as artists, those supplies can start to add up. Look around, see what you have around that you can use. Talk to people. I'm really hoping that this workshop allows us to connect with each other during this process and maybe ask questions about glues and adhesives and paints and processes. The other thing is save your receipts if you are a working artist or hobbyist or entrepreneur. I think that those will be something that you could use for your taxes in the future. As you begin and to get, you know, do this process, share your story. Share it with your friends, your families, make them aware of let them know, I should say, about this great opportunity for community and the art that's produced. I mean, I've never seen so many unique, different pieces in one place at one time and then this show. It really is wonderful and really gives a lot of people an opportunity to share their talents in so many different ways. There's glass, there's metal, there's just everything you can possibly imagine. And as an individual, think about what if you can use this to help promote yourself, and of course to circle back to the publicity for the museum. I believe, and Lisa's still on the line, I think the show's in May of 2021.
April. It's the month of April.
Month of April. Sorry, I got all my dates wrong.
I have a question for the group. Would it help everyone if I sent around everyone's email when I send the workshop video around if you want to talk to each other?
Got a thumbs up, couple thumbs up, and
Yeah.
I would like a couple
Yes.
thumbs up.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Thank you, Lisa. And I did a bit of self-promotion myself. I teach photography, I teach workshops, and I really this was a great opportunity for me to kind of get my name out there. So if you're related to an industry, some of the masks are sponsored by big businesses. It's a way to, is anyone sponsored, is it sponsored, or are we all just individual creative entrepreneur artists in this group? I'm guessing that's the majority of us. Woo! Yeah. The beauty of mute. All right. Well, thanks. I love it. Now I got feedback laugh. I love feedback laugh. So this is a really, really great process. I think it's a wonderful time to perhaps explore new techniques that you may have not used before. Use materials that you have. Think about different concepts that really speak to people and tell a story. I think that's what's really the fun part of this show, is what story does it tell about you, our community, and our lovely, lovely, lovely art museum. I am going to leave it there and open it up for any questions. And I would love, we have a few minutes left here. I would absolutely love it if anyone wants to share their concept and maybe talk about some of their concerns about how they're going to make that vision happen.
Jill, can you take your screen sharing off?
Oh, I apologize. Thank you.
Well, for me, this is Ina. I'm from Iowa, and I'm new. I was encouraged to do this. I'm part of the Blue Moose Gallery in Fort Collins, and I wake up in the middle of the night with a different idea every night. I think I've got it down to what I want to do, but I've got the colors down. I'm going to, because I'm a dot mandala artist and a fluid pour painting artist. So I want to incorporate the two of those. So, and I also work with epoxy. So I'm kind of trying to figure out if I'm going to use some alcohol inks. I'm thinking about taking two canvases, and I don't know if you can see me, and kind of doing them opposite, and they're only like 4 inches by 12 inches, and then putting the mask in the middle.
Ooh.
On top. So yeah, I'm kind of playing with that idea. I need to lay it out. I do have a studio here at my house, which I'm sitting in right now painting. And I can leave it out. So yeah.
Oh, I like that. I think starting from a color perspective is a really great way to begin. And that's one thing that I have had to tone myself down, is I want to put so much in, remembering we need a focal point for our pieces. I think it's something to keep in mind. And Ina, it sounds like you need to do a bunch of little minis on the process of you putting that together, so you can have some side pieces to share with friends and family who can't afford your mask.
Ah, yes, that's a great idea. So maybe I'll draw 'em. I paint on rocks. As I'm making a mess here in my studio. I paint on rocks. This is what I'm doing for the Blue Moose for our birthday celebration. So
fun.
I could do a mask on the rock and do the little things for them for
There you
that people
go.
that can't afford it.
I think Maya, you had your hand up. Thank you, Ina.
You're welcome.
There we go. I already know what I'm going to do the second I saw the mask, and this has been the case with pretty much the other ones that I've done in preceding years. I looked at it and I was like, I know what this reminds me of, and I'm going to do with it. I guess my main question is, and thank you so much for the suggestion for the paste and having an example of what you can do with it, because I was actually going to ask you, how do I do this? Because just part of it, it was just, I'm going to outline a shape, and I'm not sure exactly the colors I'm going to use. And I knew as soon as I knew what the shape was, it was around the time of my birthday, so I treated myself to some Stuart Semple paints, because he's I was like, this is my perfect excuse. I mean, when else am I going to use this? So I already know like the colors and everything, but the big question I have, and you spoke to this a little bit earlier, is adhesives. So there are I have a kind of a twofold slight struggle. It's, not really that big of a deal. I can figure it out. But if anyone has ideas, I will be bringing to give it a little bit more of a sculptural element, but really it's flat on the wall. In preceding years, it has not been. They've been kind of on display instead of on the wall. I was going to attach like ribbons or something like that to bring it around, but I want the ribbons to actually have shape around it instead of lying like flat. So my questions are, my conundrums are twofold, insofar as the first one is attaching it to the back, because I also like to, even though people don't look at the back, I like to make the mask complete and paint the whole thing and have little like Easter eggs hidden in the back or whatever, in case someone takes it off. They're like, oh, that's fun. So what kind of adhesive do I want to use on the back to minimize any potential obstruction for the other little things I might throw in? And second, how do I give it that rigidity to hold its shape, as far as like ribbons? Are there particular types of ribbons that maybe have a little bit more of a wiry feel to them? And so those are kind of the two.
Great question. And maybe someone who's more into textiles has a better answer, but I think that there's the wire option of fabric, but I don't always find those to be the look that I want. You could also use kind of a starch or coat it with, I would say, I don't know if much, and anyone jump in here or type in the chat what you think that I would say coating the ribbon with some kind of stiffening agent would be the way to do it, as long as it wasn't a sticky adhesive. That is a really good, you could even, like we did with the accordion thing, you could take ribbon and thread through and give it stiffness. You could thread ribbon and put wire through, but depending on how much texture, you could bead through the wire. That's why I love wire, because you can do so many different things. And what I love about wire is it gives you that flexibility, so you can be much more organic. If you're making a ribbon, just stiffening it, it's probably only going to be in a loop, most likely, unless it's something thicker. But with wire, you can do so many more possibilities. So that's a good question. I'm going to think about it. I hope that helps a little bit. In terms of the back, I would say my favorite is the 600. Does everybody use that? E600, E6000.
Okay.
It's pretty much every glue that I use. Sometimes if I need to, it takes a while to dry. So sometimes I'll hot glue it and then I'll add more. This stuff is great. It's really, really strong. I've also, for some of the things, depending on how big you're going, you could get your glue gun. This is not a glue gun. What is this called?
A caulking gun?
Yes. This thing. Use power tools. But the E6000 is pretty, that's my favorite. Does that help? And one other thing that you mentioned, sign your masks. Last couple years, I put a little note into the inside. I don't know if they'll see it, but that's kind of fun. And just, yeah, I always like to sign it. Sharpie's fine. And that lasts. I love the Easter egg hunt, the Easter eggs. That's what I had a lot in my mask last year. And I think that's great when you think about perspective, right? If they look at it from this way, it's going to have this little thing. And if they look at it from here, it's going to have this. So that sounds really exciting. Can you share what the theme is a little bit? Or
The theme is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
cool.
I watched the whole series, and it just happened to coincide with when we got the mask, and I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this.
Cool. Sounds fantastic. I can't wait to see it. It sounds like it's going to have a lot of bits and pieces. And that's what I like, is when we're using different mediums. You know, I was talking about the paint and the epoxy and fabric and ribbon. I love all those mixed mediums and the texture. That's fantastic. Anybody else have a little?
Yeah, I have a question about modeling paste.
Yes, I'm trying to see who I'm talking to.
Judy, it's Judy.
Okay.
Mom. Okay. I'm going to be using some to do some textural buildup on the face of the mask, and wondering about drying time and how porous is the substrate, the mask itself, when I apply that. And how much, will that affect the drying time?
I've never noticed anything that I've put on the mask. Okay, let me rephrase this. The mask is porous. It takes to pretty well to most things, and it takes exceptionally. It's great with this. It's fine.
Right, that's what I have. Good. Yeah.
I would say it probably says 48 hours, but I always give it longer. And I usually would recommend build up, right? As we do. Don't do too much. Like build it up, and especially if you're going to be putting anything in it,
right?
Or if it's going to hold anything, I've found I have to use it really like a clay, right? And push it together and all of those things, and then maybe add. It can crack a little bit, so that's another reason why I try to build it up to. And in I don't know if you said you just moved here. Colorado's I don't know if you're yeah. So
I moved from a more humid climate.
Yeah. And I think sometimes if we're getting down to the wire and we're trying to make sure everything's getting dry, it could, we put it by something. That's when we had some of those cracks. Bob Kuntz, who he talked about that in his artist presentation last year. He's one of our most, I think he's been in every year, 16 years of the show. And he said that he actually, the night before was up with the idea and didn't like what he had and went downstairs and changed it all and had 3 hours to get it into the museum.
Wow.
Which is crazy. I don't know if I can handle that stress. That's why I was trying to give you the timeline there to help out with the planning of it. And of course, then you put it up and then something falls off. And I think that's one of the things to think about also is the longevity of any product that you may be using. So if you are using any natural products like seeds or seeds or plants, thinking about how you're going to cure those first. I'm wondering that myself. I have some globe thistle I want to use and spray paint for part of my mask possibly. So think about that again, how long does it take me to dry and then preserve and then paint? So some of the steps that we may be thinking about may have 3 or 4 steps. Love the question.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I may. Has anyone worked with paper mache in any respect with the mask and attaching it. You know, I really didn't know what I was going to do before the workshop started, and now I have a plan. It was just so thank you for that. That's awesome. That just materialized. And I paint watercolor batik on rice paper, and last year I had a heck of a time trying to figure out how to do, I wanted to do the painting on the rice paper, and I have to remove the wax, so I have to paint it flat, then remove the wax, then apply to the mask. I had a heck of a time figuring out how to make all that work. And so, but now, this year, I still want to incorporate watercolor batik. However, now I want to add some 3D to it with paper. And I'm thinking using aluminum foil as a structure, but as far as attaching that to the mask, how do I do that?
So if you had, so say you wanted to build up on the mask, right? And you, let's just say for sake of argument, you have a aluminum ball that you want to do because you want to build up the eye, and then you're going to put the paper over the rice paper or the batik over that. I would say that I might even use a caulk, but you could get away. What I would first do is set it in with hot glue. Put it so it sets. All it is it's a placement. And then I would use either the 6000 and anyone jump in here because I'm not, you know, this is just my method. Please, if you've had experience, please, this is for everybody. I would fill in with the caulk. And again, it's a sculptural method. So really cleaning and stuff, depending on how thin your fabric or your paper is. And I would say then you could then put it over in strips and attach it from the back, right? So is it going to be in like this? Is it going to be in strips, do you think?
I'm thinking about it being more like tendrils coming out of the mask in some form, you know.
Could you use a wire mesh, like a really thin wire mesh for it?
I could probably use anything. I think for me is just the idea of keeping it lightweight and attaching it to the surface on the front.
I would say that the gesso or the paste would be a good way to build up the texture. Also, probably better than a tin foil because of the color, and it's light. It probably would be lighter in the end, depending on how much. Tendrils is a process, and I've done that where I've had stuff come out the back. So that's when you really have to think about what is the front. Are you going to do the front? What are the stages of that? Right. So if I decorate this front, is it going to be okay to be laying on the thing and then I put the tendrils coming off? Am I on the right track with what you're kind of saying?
No, but that's okay, because anything that you say is helpful, even if it's not the right, you know, exactly the right shape. I mean, I literally just sketched everything out while you were talking.
Oh, yeah, send it to me.
No, it's just the big picture right now.
I think the initial question you mentioned too was paper mache, and I have not done paper mache on this ceramic at all. I don't know if anyone else has. I think it's fairly porous that it wouldn't be an issue. Not sure. I want to see your little sketch, and I want to see if I can come up with some ideas for that. Thank you, everybody. We're at 7:30, and I am one who likes to make sure we end on time and everyone has that opportunity to leave if they need to go get their wine and their beer and their sketchbooks, which is my hope, or whatever, your coffee or tea. And we'll get that corrected timeline to you. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes if anyone has any more questions. Thank you guys. And
Thank
you all
you.
for showing and sharing and playing with my silly little tactics. I didn't know what everyone was going to have, but work with your hands and please share, and I'll do a follow-up email with some of these resources. Thank you everybody for sharing.
Thank you very
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to see what you have, Amy. I'm so excited. You made my day.
Thank you so much. That was fun.
Thank you for participating.
Great job, Jill.